wasn't born a star. She was born Beyoncé Giselle Knowles, in a modest home nestled in the heart of Houston, Texas. The kind of place where summer heat melted the pavement, where church choirs raised the roof on Sunday mornings, and where little girls dreamed big while dancing barefoot in the yard. From the moment she could walk, Beyoncé moved with rhythm in her bones. Her parents would laugh, watching their toddler sway her hips to jingles on TV commercials like it was the Grammy stage. Her mother, Tina, every strand of canvas, and her father, Matthew, carried the quiet intensity of a man with ambition simmering under his skin. It wasn't all glitter and praise. At 7 years old, she entered her first talent show. The crowd was mostly family friends and local neighbors, but when she opened her mouth to sing Imagine by John Lennon, something shifted in the room. The audience froze. A silence fell that wasn't awkward, it was reverent. She won, of course. The trophy wasn't big, but the spark it lit was massive. But success doesn't climb straight up. When Beyoncé was 9, she joined a girl group called Girls' Time. They rehearsed in garages, danced in basements, and poured their young souls into every shaky performance. The girls were talented, no doubt, but they weren't ready. They auditioned for Star Search, thinking they were unstoppable. They lost. Publicly. Brutally. She cried that night, not because she hated losing, but because for the first time, she tasted the bitterness of almost, of being close and still not enough. Her father told her, "This is where most people give up. But not you." Matthew made a choice then. He quit his job to manage her career full-time. Friends called him reckless. Family worried. But Beyoncé watched this man sacrifice stability for her dream, and that lit a new fire in her. She doubled her rehearsals, trained her voice, studied performances like scripture. The girl was building herself like a monument, brick by brick. Through heartbreaks and lineup changes, Girls' Time evolved into Destiny's Child. And they weren't just a girl group anymore. They were a storm. Their breakout hit, No, 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 hit the radio like a thunderclap. Suddenly, Beyoncé wasn't just the girl from Houston. She was that girl. But even then, it wasn't smooth. Fame came with scrutiny. As the group rose, tension brewed. Ego clashes, media drama, even betrayal. When 2 members were controversially replaced, the backlash was brutal. Beyoncé, still a teenager, became the face of blame. She went from America's sweetheart to the villain in tabloids almost overnight. She spiraled, slept less, ate less. Her mental health cracked under pressure. At her lowest, she locked herself in her bedroom for days. Curtains closed. Phone off. The girl who once danced in sunlight now hid from it. Rumors swirled that she was finished, that she was just a lucky voice riding a wave that had already crested. But what they didn't know, what they never saw, was the night she stood in front of her mirror, cheeks, and whispered, "No one gets to write my ending but me." And from there, she began again. Starting over wasn't glamorous. It wasn't red carpets or screaming fans. It was sweat, silence, and doing the same vocal run 50 times until it sounded like truth. Beyoncé began working on solo material in secret, not because she didn't believe in Destiny's Child, but because she was beginning to hear a voice in her head, her own. One that didn't blend into harmonies, one that wanted to stand alone in the spotlight. But stepping out meant risking everything. What if people didn't like her without the group? What if she was just a fraction of a whole? She didn't tell many people. Just wrote. Just recorded. Just waited. And then came the gamble. Her first solo single, Crazy in Love. It hit like a bomb. From the opening horn blast to her strut in that iconic denim mini, she was no longer the lead singer from that girl group. She was Beyoncé. Unapologetically, unmistakably Beyoncé. But the success brought a new beast with it. Fame at this level wasn't just pressure, it was surveillance. Every step she took, every word she said, every smile she didn't give became a headline. People picked apart her body, her relationships, her silence. Especially him. Jay-Z. Their relationship bloomed in the shadows at first. Studio sessions that turned into long talks. Flirty glances behind the cameras. It wasn't flashy, it was real. And that scared her more than anything. Because for once, the thing she stood to lose wasn't a record deal. It was her heart. She kept it quiet. Not because she was ashamed, but because she was protective. Love, real love, doesn't need a spotlight. It needs safety. And she had learned, the hard way, that the world wasn't always kind to the things she cared about most. But with love came trust. And with trust came lemonade. That album wasn't just a release. It was an exhale after holding her breath for years. It was fury, forgiveness, freedom, and everything in between. People didn't just listen to that album, they felt it. For many, it wasn't just music. It was survival. A soundtrack to betrayal and healing. Behind the scenes, she was becoming a mother. That changed her in ways she couldn't explain. Her body, once an instrument for dance and performance, became a vessel of life. Her voice, once chasing notes, now whispered lullabies. And still she rose. With every reinvention, she stayed true. With every stage she conquered, she brought others with her. Black women, mothers, dreamers, fighters. She wasn't just singing anymore. She was leading. And yet, there was still more to come. There's a myth people believe about greatness, that once you reach the top, the climb is over. But Beyoncé learned that the top isn't a peak. It's a spotlight. And it burns. After Lemonade, after the world saw her heart split open and stitched back together in real time, the question became, what now? She didn't run from it. She leaned in. Coachella 2018 was supposed to be just another headlining gig. For her, it was a mission. She had just given birth to twins. Her body had been through war, emergency C-section, months of healing, sleepless nights. Her strength had been tested in silence. And now, she was about to step on stage in front of hundreds of thousands and remind the world who she was. But this time, it wasn't just about her. She wanted to bring the culture with her. Not watered down. Not rebranded. She built a stage inspired by HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, filled it with a full marching band, steppers, dancers, singers, and cymbals, every second a tribute to black excellence, pride, and power. She called it homecoming. It wasn't just a performance. It was a reclamation. People saw the glitter and perfection, but they didn't see the work, the rehearsals that ran 12 hours a day, the strict diet, the injuries, the doubt. She didn't bounce back from pregnancy. She fought back. That's what Beyoncé had become, not just an artist, but a living blueprint for resilience. And still, she remained elusive. Private. People kept asking, why doesn't she do interviews anymore? The truth was simple. She had learned that power is protected in silence. That mystery isn't a mask. It's a boundary. Behind closed doors, she was building more than music. She was building her empire. Parkwood. Ivy Park. Visual albums. Every move was intentional. Every step was a declaration. I am not just talent, I am the table. But even empires can't shield you from grief. When Kobe Bryant died, when George Floyd echoed through the world, when the pandemic shut down stages, she sat still like the rest of us. Held her children tighter. Prayed more. Wrote in the dark. Out of that stillness came Black is King. A film. A visual album. A love letter to Africa and the diaspora. But more than that, it was a gift. Not just to the world, but to her younger self. The little girl who sang in living rooms, who lost on Star Search, who was once told she was too black, too bold, too much. Now, she was all of it, and she owned every inch. She wasn't chasing trends anymore. She was setting the standard. She had nothing left to prove. But still, she wasn't done. By now, Beyoncé didn't just walk into rooms. She shifted gravity. When she entered, the air changed. People stood straighter. Hearts pounded faster. Not out of fear, out of reverence. Because they weren't just looking at a celebrity. They were looking at a force. And yet, she still moved like a woman with something to say. You'd see it in the way she'd glide on stage, each step measured, but alive, like she wasn't walking, she was commanding. Her dancers followed her lead, not just because of choreography, but because of faith. Faith in the fact that she would never ask anyone to do what she hadn't already mastered herself. She was the first in, the last out, and the fiercest one in between. Then came Renaissance. Oh, that album didn't knock. It exploded. It was joy, unfiltered, unapologetic, black, queer, sacred joy. It wasn't made for charts or critics. It was made for the dance floor. For the community. For the ones who lived in shadows too long and were now ready to shine. From Break My Soul to Heated, she wasn't just singing, she was moving through generations, pulling disco balls from the past and lighting them up in the now. Every beat dropped like a heartbeat. Every lyric hit like freedom. And when she hit the stage for the Renaissance World Tour, she didn't just perform. She elevated. She became a metallic goddess, riding chrome horses, wrapped in mirrors and lasers, drenched in sweat and sequins. Her voice? Still flawless. But now, it carried the weight of years. Of motherhood. Of love weathered by time. Of victories earned in silence. The fans showed up in silver, screaming her name like it was gospel. And when she looked out into the crowd, her smile was quiet, like a woman who had seen storms and still chose to dance in the rain. Because Beyoncé had become more than music. She was movement. She was memory. She was magic stitched into flesh. But off stage? She was still that girl from Houston. The one who danced in her mama's living room. The one who fell and got back up. The one who found love, lost pieces of herself in it, then built something even stronger from the wreckage. She cooked breakfast. She braided her daughter's hair. She whispered affirmations to herself when no one was listening. She lit candles. She prayed. Because even queens kneel sometimes. And as the world kept spinning, she remained grounded. Graceful. Grateful. Still evolving. Still dancing. Still becoming. By now, the world had crowned her. Not just with awards or applause, but with respect. The kind that doesn't fade when the music stops. The kind that lingers in generations, in echoes, in little girls spinning in their bedrooms, pretending to be her. And yet, Beyoncé was no longer chasing stages. She was building sanctuaries. She began to show up less, and when she did, it was intentional, precise, sacred. A visual drop here. A single line in a song there. She had mastered the art of absence, turning silence into anticipation. Her presence, when it came, was like a comet, rare, breathtaking, unforgettable. But that didn't mean she was gone. It meant she had arrived. She poured herself into legacy now. Not just in music, but in mentorship, in motherhood, in moments the world would never see. She was raising artists. Raising minds. Raising herself again and again in her children's laughter, in her mother's eyes, in every black girl who dared to dream with her name in their mouth. She invested in voices that had never been heard before. She funded dreams behind the scenes. She didn't need the credit. She just needed the impact. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the house was still, when the lights were low, and the world outside kept spinning, she'd sit at the piano, barefoot, fingers grazing the keys. No cameras. No audience. Just her. And maybe she'd hum a melody. Something no one had heard yet. Something raw. Something honest. And maybe she'd pause. Smile. Because she knew. She knew she had become more than she ever dreamed. More than a pop star. More than a queen. She had become a story. One that would be told long after the music fades. And that's how she rose. And fell. And rose again. Not just as Beyoncé the icon. But as Beyoncé the woman, flawed, fiery, brilliant, real. The kind of story that doesn't end. It just keeps echoing.